me, success is how many people I took along with me on a journey.
I have the feeling I am working for something really beautiful, really life-changing things, helpful for others. Like, I'm not only working for myself.
If I walk out of here tomorrow, I would have a completely different understanding of who I am and what I'm capable of. And that's a big success.
I'm very young, I'm 24 years old. And I think in the last 6 months, I learned more than in 23 years before.
I create something for the society. It's more bigger than me. And then this is the huge creation is opening, It's happiness. It's happiness. Happiness in action.
That's why if you ever get your ego bruised, the best thing you can do is follow like a cat. Follow with style, great. So, I got this.
There's only one way to take it, and that's hard, man. There's only one way to own it. She wanna drown in the city lights, but it's alright. If she wanna make a mistake, you better let her, man.
2013. u napuštenim prostorijama nekadašnje berlinske kladionice započeo je zanimljiv eksperiment. 6 mladih ljudi različitih profesija povezala je zajednička vizija. Pokrenuli su projekte, organizovali događaje, okupili inovativne saradnike kako bi dokučili kako treba da izgleda poslovanje u budućnosti.
We started out with what we had, so it was a couple of people with, well, I would say good education, with our laptops, our hands and hearts, and we just started doing it. Yeah? So there was no assignment, there was no investor, there was nobody who told us what to do. It was really out of pure curiosity and initiative that we said, let's do something together.
Agencija Putovanje ka kreaciji, skraćeno J2C, danas je u svom sektoru među najuspješnijim njemačkim kompanijama kada je u pitanju profitabilnost. Već tokom prve godine rada zaradili su preko 1.000.000 eura. Bila bi ovo obična uspješna biznis priča da način rada radikalno ne iskače iz standardne poslovne paradigme našeg vremena.
Working here is completely different because there's no boss. I'm the boss for myself, and I encourage myself to do the best work I can do because there's nobody telling me what's my job. There's nobody telling me you have to do this or that. It's just me. I'm telling myself what to do, and that gives me so much freedom that I'm actually 100% more effective in my work here than I was for the electricity company.
We don't have formal hierarchies. We don't have formal leadership. It would be wrong to say we don't have hierarchy or we don't have leadership. We have both of them, but they're not formal, they're not denominated, they are emergent. They emerge depending on the context, the situation, and the skill set that's in the room. So everyone here can step up, make their own decisions, and treat the company as if it's their own, actually. As you maybe remember, I once told you, everyone in our company has access to our finances. Everyone sees all the information that's there. We have a 100% transparency rule within the company. And that's how we try to enable the human factor within the organization.
Leadership-wise, everybody can be a leader. Everybody can take leadership and follow a pursuit, a certain goal. And then you are the one who organizes a team and who is the leader and who has to take the same responsibilities. That is, you have to trust the other people, you have to trust in your team that you just built. You have to let the people go and let them work the way they really want to work themselves. So it's all about trust. It's all about trying to see the potential in the people, also trying to go into positive conflict and try to work with the potential that is there in order to let something emerge that is bigger than the picture that you have at hand.
Agencija J2C pomaže raznim kompanijama, od moćnih korporacija do malih preduzeća, da se transformišu, prestrukturiraju, postanu efikasnije, riješe akutne probleme, polazeći uvijek od sopstvene konstitutivne premise da su ljudi, ljudski potencijal, ljudska kreativnost, ključna vrijednost svakog biznisa.
What are the basics of business? Business is profoundly human to human, in essence. Why? Business is the act of action, interaction, transaction between human beings in order to create value and development, betterment for everyone involved. That's what business is in essence. So I always like to quote Peter Drucker, who was a great management thinker, who in a conference on organizational structure was asked what he thinks is the best structure for a modern organization. And he answered, after short pause, he answered, for you to have a business, someone somewhere at some point needs to buy something from you. And then he shut up. Which basically means the basic, in essence, once you create value, then we can talk about having a business.
Zato je u agenciji J2C raznovrsnost ljudskog potencijala posebna vrijednost.
So I spent 5 years in the corporate world, in the banking world, experiencing what it is like to have a very focused job and have a lot of expectations and not a lot of room to explore. So what made me change from going to a very big company to a smaller company was I wanted to have impact on the culture. I wanted to have impact on how the organization structures itself, and I wanted a very collaborative way of changing over time.
I worked as a journalist to start for different newspapers and TV stations, and then I slowly got into fashion, so I got distracted by all the glitz and glamour of London and then Paris actually, and worked for different magazines like Vogue, for example, in London and in Paris. And I headed up the fashion news for Agence France Presse, which is a big news agency. Worked for New York Magazine, and then I fell in love and came to Berlin.
I used to work for like half a year for one of the biggest German electricity companies, and it's called crisis management for them. So actually I was preparing the CEOs of the company for the worst case scenario, which is, for example, a blackout. So if hackers attack the company or attack a city like Berlin, and they just destroy all the electricity here. So we have a completely blackout, and I trained them in what to do, what steps to take.
I studied psychology, first of all, with a focus on neuro and rehabilitation psychology. So my passion is really like how the human functions and how the brain works. And there it all starts. And I then went to Brazil because I was already a little bit in neuroscience as a student assistant, and I wanted to find out whether I want to go in this direction. And I actually found a very nice lab in Brazil. Actually, I did lab hopping, so I used the opportunity to visit many different labs in Brazil and Argentina. And I found wonderful people. And the professor at Porto Alegre in Brazil said, because I asked him if I had the opportunity now, I would go to Berlin and I would go to Professor Menzel. So he paved the way to my PhD position that I took then afterwards. And it was actually about honeybee brains. So I started a PhD in Berlin with Professor Menzel and investigating neuronal circuits in honeybee brains.
I'm an actor and studied acting in the Netherlands before I moved to Berlin. And after I finished my acting studies, I moved here and started to explore options for work. And it wasn't so easy because my German was not so good, so it was very hard to find a job as an actor. So what I did, I looked for more options to train myself, and I started studying movement, I started studying vocal work. And the first thing that I did after finishing my vocal studies, I became a voice teacher. So I started working with singers, with actors, and helping them finding their true voice. And that sounds very big, finding their true voice, but it means getting their voices to connect to their bodies and also working with them on the elements of rhythm, melody, pacing and all that, articulation.
Paradoksalno, niko od zaposlenih u agenciji u J2C nije došao kao ekspert za prestrukturiranje preduzeća. Ovdje nećete dobiti radno mjesto primarno zahvaljujući diplomi ili čak znanjima i vještinama. Ovdje rade kreativni, radoznali, inovativni vizionari kojima je sloboda stvaranja i rada osnovni pokretač.
Freedom as a term is really, to me, it can be defined through the space I have as a human being to act. And the space can be, on the one hand, physical. So the physical spaces that we find ourselves in are very important to how we perceive ourselves and how we can act. And then also the spaces we give in terms of what decisions can we take and how can we act. And what I realized was that sitting in a small cubicle with 4 screens and having the next person next to me but no interaction, it doesn't allow for really a collaborative, creative environment. And what I found here in Berlin, generally, that's why I chose Berlin, is that there is a lot of space available, or there was a lot of space available at the time, and that we can experiment what kind of spaces do we need in what work modes. And out of this openness, things can emerge and good ideas can emerge, you know, people can be attracted. So opening up space, always being open, inviting people in, and giving a lot of space for people to, you know, do different types of work is something that I found very valuable, also to the evolution of a company.
I've worked in many established companies before, and what was most worrying for me actually was that people never got to really be themselves, including myself, and you know, you had to kind of accept a certain role to be part of that system or to be part of that make pretend world. And also the job that I did, which was branding, I would say, is to make people believe something, even if you know it's not quite right. And that was something that I couldn't get behind any longer. So when I was talking to Habib and Manjot, we kind of agreed that communications should be all about what's actually on the inside, what's the core of the issue, and how can we actually transport it to the outside world in its honesty and not lie to people anymore. So yeah, that's the main difference, I would say.
I really like the freedom we have here. I think this is the most beautiful thing you can give to people. It's always freedom. And in a working environment, to have the freedom to come to work when you want, or to work in the office, or if you want, if you don't feel like coming to the office, you do home office and work from home, or work from remote places all over the world if you want. That's a thing which encouraged me to deliver the best work I can do. And on the other hand, it's just the love that is around at J2C, because I don't feel like these are my co-workers. All these people here, they became my friends, because there's hugging all the time, and we love each other. We cook with each other, and we eat, and that's more than a work environment. That's a friendship.
U ovakvoj atmosferi J2C radi mnoge uspješne projekte, vodeći kompanije i zaposlene na uzbudljiva evolutivna putovanja.
We have an entrepreneurship program that runs over 12 months with the corporation, actually, with the company, where they send us 80 to 100 employees every year. They come into our space for a year. They don't stay with us for a year. They have 12 touch points over the year with us. So they come from all over Germany. And in those touch points, we work with them on mindset, opportunity discovery, value offering design, system design, pitching, communication, and so on. And I love that program for the completeness that it brings. I love the program for what it has achieved also with our clients. So to give you an idea, the reason why they send the employees to us is because they expect to generate revenue out of the ideas that are produced in this program within 1 year of completion of the program. And the rule of thumb is they want to achieve around 2.5 million per idea over 2 years time span. So in this program, when we first ran it, it was a completely intellectual program. It had everything you need for entrepreneurship, but it was conceptual. So we ran it, and we had an intake of about 80 or 90 people, and the results were just okay. And we realized after the first year it's too intellectual, we need to make it experiential. So we did that, and in the second year it got better, but it was still not where we wanted it to be. And so we got back and we asked ourselves, what is it that we're doing here? What is it that we're dealing with? Why aren't we achieving the results that we want to see? And we realized, what I was mentioning to you about mindset, we realized that the people that are coming to us, they're not entrepreneurs, they're employees. They're brought to us in order to cultivate an entrepreneurial mindset. But that means their mindset has, for years, been cultivated to be the opposite. So what we need to do, next to teaching them about the mindset on paper, next to giving them the methods and tools, we need to allow them to really connect to themselves and feel their own power and their own intelligence also, beyond just the intellect, you know, the bodily intelligence, the intuition, the emotional intelligence. So what we started doing in this program is, and we realized that stress was a big factor for these guys because they were working 80-hour weeks. So there are many studies that show that when you're stressed, your creative potential goes down. So what we did is we tied into this program that is a very hard, facts-driven entrepreneurship program. We started to tie in soft aspects such as qigong, meditation, breath work, what we call sound journeys, where it's a mixture of hypno-meditative storytelling and improvised music. We started to introduce these things, and the program, just the impact that the program suddenly started to have was phenomenal. We've run this program now for about 5 years, and we've generated for our client with this program specifically around 200 million in new business, euros, in new business over the last 5 years.
I'm a bit of an explorer of different futures. I go out, travel the world, meet a lot of different people and companies with different perspectives, and I bring that inspiration home and share that in keynotes, in workshops, in social media, of course, and also in a very particular format which we call the innovation expedition or a trend journey. In that format we curate very personal encounters and dialogues between more corporate managers on the one side, and then on the other hand founders and entrepreneurs of startups, to learn from each other, to share experiences, to really dive deep and to inspire each other. And this format we've done many times, especially here in Berlin, because it's our playground and there are a lot of different startups out there, but also in Dubai, London, Shanghai, and the last one in Lisbon, Portugal, as part of a future conference called La Futura. And that one was very special. We scouted over 250 locations in the city and created 10 different routes which the participants could choose from to explore the city from a different lens, from a different perspective. And on these journeys we always meet some of the entrepreneurs, so there's a direct encounter, but then also other things that we just explore, walk in, walk by, and be curious and explore the city with slightly different view, I would say.
That's why if you ever get your ego bruised, the best thing you can do is call like a cat. Follow with style, great, do it. Like, I got this.
There's only one way to take it, and that's hard.
U ovoj inovativnoj agenciji, kao u nekom stalno otvorenom eksperimentu, isprobavaju se razni modeli poslovanja. Od samog osnivanja, jedna od ključnih razlika u odnosu na korporacije ili klasična preduzeća jeste odsustvo bilo kakve formalne hijerarhije. Sistem u kome su sve slobode, ali i odgovornosti date svakom zaposlenom ponaosob, nazvan je holarhija.
The word holarchy is a word that was constructed by systems thinkers in the 60s, as far as I know, and it's based on the Greek word holon, which means to be whole in yourself, but at the same time part of a larger whole. Like a cell in the body is in itself complete, but at the same time part of a bigger self. So if you look at traditional hierarchies, usually the parts are segregated and separate, and one part can never capture all functions within the system. You know, so you have a strategic function, you have an operational function, you have a sales function, you have a marketing function. They're all separate. And I do my function here, I pass it on. In a holarchy, the ideology is that each unit in the organization, in our case it's a human being, should be able to cover all aspects of the organization within themselves. Right? So they should be able to think strategically, they should be able to think in terms of value, they should be able to sell to the customer, to deliver to the customer, to work with one another, etc., etc. So I call it the ideology because really to reach that level is quite difficult to achieve. But just the intention to tend towards that leads to new forms of organization. So that's the intention we have. We want to enable everyone in our organization to make the decisions that an entrepreneur or a CEO would be able to make, or someone, a consultant with a client, or someone that sits in HR and decides whether certain personal development things should be approved or not, or someone that sits in finance and decides where the budget should go or not.
Everyone at J2C is a unit that's complete within itself, but it's also part of a bigger unit, which is J2C. So what we have is we provide just enough structure so that everyone knows what can I do, what do I want to do, how can I contribute, but also a lot of freedom to say, I'm part of a bigger organism and I can move things around, I can try things out. And in a way, we're very loosely organized, but very clearly organized. So we have what we call heuristics that on an everyday basis allow us to make decisions. So if we think again about the organism is trying to do something, and in order to do anything, at the basis of that is making a decision. Do I make this step or this step? Do we hire someone? How do we work with this client? And all of these decisions, every single person at J2C is able to take.
What we do in order to cultivate this hierarchy within the organization is, as I say, number one, we don't have formal hierarchies. That's very important because a formal hierarchy means I am denominating, I am pointing out, I'm saying, you now have that power, right? But do you really? If no one follows you, do you have that power? No, you just have a label. And then I have to give you tools to enforce the power because actually no one wants to follow you. Not you personally of course, yeah? But that's the point. So we remove these structures and we say, if you want to take the lead, you better bring quality to the table, otherwise people will not follow, right? Which is challenging in a way also, right? So that's number one. Number two, the matter of title often plays a role. Who's got what title? At J2C, we don't give out any titles. Everyone here is an employee at J2C. We're just J2C people, that's it. We have informal titles that we throw at each other depending on who's doing what at the moment, but we don't, within our organization, we don't have formal titles. We also don't determine salaries, holidays, workloads centrally. Actually, we do this independently. Each of our employees chooses their own salary. And they choose it, and if the company can afford the salaries as a whole, so not even on an individual case, but as a whole, they get what they ask for.
The one decision that's very fundamental to anyone is, what am I taking out of the company that I'm working for? And that's the salary aspect. So we've designed a model last year where everyone can go through a very in-depth reflection as to their own value creation for the company. Next to that, every person can or needs to inform themselves where the company stands economically and where it's going. And based on those two aspects, the freedom, which can also be tricky, is to say, this is what I claim to be my salary and what I want in return from everything that I'm doing. And I think that's quite rare. Because it's A, one of the topics that triggers the ego very quickly, and B, it's basically our biggest expense as a company is, these are the salaries that we pay. So the fact that we don't want to control them, actually we want salaries to be a topic that we can just say, fix it, and then let's move on from that matter and see what we can do. And I think that's an extent of freedom that isn't seen a lot in today's world.
You personally proposed this model. How did you come up with this idea?
This specific topic was a very personal wound I had from my previous work, where there was zero transparency. In fact, it was illegal or not allowed to talk about this topic. And there was a very clear hierarchical top-down, you know, this is what's in for you, so be happy. And I really felt after 5 years that I was not given, you know, in a way I was abused because I put a lot of time into my work. And when I found out about some things, I couldn't even address them. I couldn't bring the topic up. So that's the personal aspect, but also from a company's point of view, I think it is a very highly motivating aspect, right? Being given a fair salary, but also being involved in this process. And so I think for us in the long term, you know, it's very clear to me, having maybe 5 or 6 people who feel that way and who drive everyone else won't have the same impact as 30 to 50 people who are all seeing themselves empowered to work in this way for the company. And that's what moved me, to say I want 100% transparency, so everyone should know about everyone else's salary also. We can move on from the comparison. But B, if I choose it myself, then I can't go on to anyone and say, look, why am I not getting this? Because you're the one who's choosing it for yourself.
Are there any challenges regarding this model? Because we could all be biased when it comes to self-assessment.
The overarching topic there is awareness. Am I aware of myself? And am I aware of the company and its situation? So we talk of this eco perspective, you know, diving into myself, and there we have things like, am I aware of my skills? Am I aware of my economic contribution? Am I aware of my systemic contribution within the company? Am I aware how I'm developing myself? And am I aware of how am I bringing the company forward by entrepreneurial actions? So we have 5 fields that we need to create awareness in. And awareness means really understanding, not I think that I'm doing well there, but what am I actually contributing? So that's the creation, you know, of the value, and being aware of what I'm doing will lead me to a very sober and realistic conclusion.
How does this self-assessment process work?
If I wanted to, let's put it that way, if I wanted to, I could abuse the openness of the system. The way we try to deal with the subjectiveness is that I have to share my reflection with 3 people. Someone who supports me as a role, someone who's challenging me as a role, and someone who's representing the company perspective, kind of the eco perspective of the system as a role. And that should allow me to really round up the way I reflect on these things. But it's an open process, so yeah.
Ovi nesvakidašnji principi rada prolaze test realnosti na tržištu jer agencija, iako se izdvaja veliki novac za plate i blagostanje zaposlenih, godinama uspješno posluje. U same temelje agencije ugrađeni su principi saradnje i kokreacije, a ne rivalstva i takmičenja.
They are now getting more and more important. They have been important all the time, but we have not viewed them as important because we were in our competition mode, in our shareholder value mode, in order to make money. But this homo economicus is not the status quo anymore. It's the homo socialis. We are completely social animals, and thanks to science and brave people who still fight for this perspective, because there are a lot of economics who do not want to take this view. We are in the process to recognize that we are not competitors. We have a deep urge to cooperate. Whenever we cooperate with each other, our reward systems in the brain, they become highly, highly active. When I do compete with others at a low level, this makes sense. Like children who want to be first, of course we want to be first too. But if this is a status quo also in our firm, we are in constant stress, and stress makes us sick. We are, or every organism can handle short-term stress. If you have a deer and the deer is followed by or haunted by a predator, it will have or perceive a high level of stress. But as soon as the deer is in a safe place again, this stress level goes down. And we are losing this capacity to regulate from stress to relaxation. We are losing this regulation or this regulatory capacity of our autonomous nervous system, and this makes us sick. Nearly all diseases that we know are stress-related, and the consequence is an extremely high economic burden for the insurances, for the organizations, because the people cannot go to work. They get sick, they get psychosomatic illnesses, they get back pain, headaches, diabetes, whatever you want. And by now we also know, thanks to epigenetics, which is a scientific field which is quite young, epi stands for above the gene, we know that most of the diseases are not determined by our genes, but they are determined by our lifestyle.
If something is good for me as a human being, it will be good for my environment and also for my work environment, and actually also for my work. So that's a very basic understanding that I have of well-being. And given that, you know, we spend a lot of time and we put a lot of our energy into the work and into the things that we create, having that recreational aspect embedded within work, it seems very obvious to me. So that's one thing. And the other one is that culturally speaking, you know, I spoke of rituals earlier. It's one of the most beautiful rituals to say that we can practice yoga or meditation or qigong or have a sound journey or experience something that allows us to connect with ourselves, but also within our group at J2C, and in a context that's not driven by our everyday work, you know. So it's very refreshing. It allows us to connect, and you know, it gives us energy. It gives us more energy, so we can put it in. So yeah, to me, it's non-negotiable. I think, you know, if it's just a transaction, I come to work, I pay with my time, and I get some money out, then I don't think that bears the same results as saying we're a system with human beings who, you know, who are there to work.
We take each other in that sense for full human beings with all our emotions, our thoughts, and our feelings around a lot of things. And just, I can walk in here being me. Rob, the actor that also does coaching, and I can bring my life visions into this company, but also into the outside world. So it's quite a special place to be in this one. Yeah. Yeah.
Na ovom sasvim posebnom mjestu gotovo svakodnevno zaposleni imaju priliku da vježbaju jogu, meditaciju, svjesno disanje i mnoge druge holističke metode koje doprinose njihovom blagostanju i istovremeno otvaraju prostor za originalne ideje, inovativnost, sposobnost da se sagleda šira slika.
Breathing, for example, what we did this morning, we did holotropic breathing, which is a very deep breathing. And breathing is extremely good for the tone, but also for the regulation capacity of the vagus nerve, which is part of the autonomous nervous system. So and also the second part is that breathing controls most of our synchrony of our cerebral cortex, which is the surface of our brain. And this has an influence, an extremely influence of our cognitive capacity. capacity, also of the capacity to view ourselves, to have like a metacognition of ourselves. And this helps when we are talking about monkey mind, for example. So one, the vagus nerve and the autonomous nervous system is for our health. When we do the breathing, it helps us to cope with stress and to get into the relaxation state more easily and much more time, so that we are not 70% of our time in the stress mode, but maybe only 20 or 30%, and the other time we are relaxated. That makes us healthy. The second issue, or the second benefit from these contemplative breathing exercises and other exercises that we do, is that it helps us to monitor ourselves, so we can distract a little bit from our ego. We can let go of this constant thinking, am I enough? Is this person giving me a gaze that is meaning this and that? Because, you know, our brain is constantly interpreting things around.
We are more hurry. It's more fast. Everything is going to go more and more faster. And we need a medicine to bring it down. Like maybe when the world is fast, then I am going to be more relaxed, to techniques, relaxation technique, meditation, yoga, you know, qigong, because we need some medicine, you know. When some part of our life is going to be really, really fast, maybe one part of my life is going to be relaxed, more and more relaxed. And then this is like yin and yang. You know, I can adjust them, and it's important because we lose the energy when we are hurried, when we are stressed, when we have fear because life is going too fast, you know. And we need some medicine, some energetic medicine, you know, some medicine for our mind, for our soul, for our body. You know, sometimes food is not enough. You know, we need some another part. Good sleeping, like, you know, have good relationships, to cultivate relationships. It's all here. We try to do it. You know, we try to be an example for others. You know.
If you go back to the breathing work that we did this morning, you can easily translate that to death awareness work, you know, because you're breathing in and you're breathing out, and you can easily picture yourself taking the last breath, for example, and what would it be like if this was your last breath, and how happy were you with the life as you currently lived it. And I think that's a very impactful exercise to have, because it gives you a good status quo of your current work situation, of your current relationships. What are the knots inside your system that still have to be resolved? And if you do this on a regular level, I think you can achieve more peace with the situation you're in, because you're more consciously working towards resolving those conflicts.
Priča agencije J2C daleko je od narativa konvencionalnog biznisa. To je priča iz budućnosti. Priča o stalnom eksperimentisanju, otvorenosti za promjenu, njegovanju ljudskih odnosa, dubokom povjerenju da će se najbolji modeli rada i inovativna rješenja prirodno pojaviti ako zaposleni dobiju dovoljno prostora, vremena i slobode da se sretnu, umreže i u ovoj svojevrsnoj kreativnoj kuhinji skrčkaju svoje ideje.
We have a big set of very original personalities, people that have their own interests and their own passions, and that are very true to themselves, in my experience. There's a very open communication, and in the space we create among each other, it feels like anything can be said and worked with. So it's the first time in my working life that I feel I can be completely myself. And I think that's hopefully the same for everyone here.
So we are all very different, but we all have a common purpose. We all want to change something in this world for better. And I have had the experience through all my life that miracles only emerge and can happen when you connect with other people. So you won't create a miracle by sitting on your computer at your desk at home and whatever, typing your ideas. You can write probably great books and all this stuff, but the real miracles happen when you have communities, when you have other people who share your values and your visions and your ideas, and with whom you can connect. And one value that is so precious here is that we learn from each other so much. Because we have so different backgrounds, because we are so extremely diverse, and we are, thanks to this space, also open-minded that we know we have to learn all the time, we have to fail all the time, but then we step up and we help each other to get better every day, because we know we cannot do that from scratch, we cannot do that every day. But together, you know, when you connect, the moment you listen to me, the moment you understand my language and the content of what I speak to you, our brains synchronize. Our hearts may even synchronize when we are connected on this feeling level, on this emotional level as well. And the room in between is where the miracles happen.
There's only one way to take it, and that's hard, man. There's only one way to own it. She wanna drown in the city lights, but it's alright. If she wanna make a mistake, you better let her, man. You've gotta learn what it takes to keep a good thing from going bad.